Hi, and welcome to Tech Talk, the Banker's video series on everything fintech. I'm Joy Macknight, Deputy Editor at The Banker, and I'm here with Steve Kirsch, founder and CEO of Token, which is a PSD Payment Services Directive 2 startup that's based in San Francisco, but is now also based here in Level 39 in London. Steve, thanks so much for joining us today. Can you tell me a little bit about Token and what you do?
Sure. So what we're creating is an open banking platform that we license that technology to banks. And what we're trying to do is move banks from very closed systems into open systems, an open platform where developers can write applications that run on top of the banking's services. And so the idea is to, just like cell phones were transformed when we went from cell phones to smartphones, and now cell phones almost don't exist anymore, we're going to try to do pretty much the same thing for the banking system, which has no apps that can be really directly written and work across all banks. We're trying to give a platform so that each bank has the same software platform, so a developer only has to write one piece of code and then it works across all banks.
Okay, because there is happening right now the application programming interface, API revolution they're calling it. Right. How is that going to disrupt the banking industry?
Well, it depends on how the bankers react to it. And right now, each bank is creating their own proprietary API. And in some cases, we have banks that have 3 different APIs. And if you're a developer, you tear your hair out. It's just too much to manage. Even the very, very largest developers only want to write to a single software interface. And so it's important for bankers to resist the urge to say, we're going to do it ourselves, we're going to have our own API, and all agree on one standard API. And we think we have the best standard API for that, but that's another story.
Okay, and the Payment Services Directive 2 really promotes this whole idea of open banking. How are the banks responding to that, do you think?
Well, there are 2 ways you can respond to it as a bank. You can either look at it defensively, and we've seen some banks that say, oh my gosh, this is going to change everything. We got to make sure that our stuff is really difficult for people to use and hope that nobody uses it because it's going to destroy our card revenue and so forth. So you can play defense. The other way you approach it is you play offense. And that's when a bank goes in and says, hey, this is a big shift to open systems. We're going to be the leader in open systems, and we're going to go adopt a standard platform, and we're going to write applications on top of that platform. So there are 2 different bets, and of course I'm kind of biased, but I really, truly think that this is open systems is inevitable. It's mandated, and the more you resist it, the more problematic it's going to be for you. The winners in the game are the people who are the most aggressive and play on the offense rather than defense.
And PSD2, tons of banks are having to spend quite a bit of money on compliance for that. How can they monetize their investments?
So with PSD2, you can actually charge for all kinds of services, and especially to so there's some parties, they're called PISPs and AISPs, that give some special treatment. But generally, the only thing that's free is information on transactions, and only to those qualified third parties. Everything else you can charge for. So PSD2 sets no charge caps at all on anything that the bank does beyond those mandated, this must be free. And so this opens up an enormous opportunity for banks who are smart enough to capitalize on the opportunity.
Okay, and I know Token has actually signed a number of quite high-profile deals recently and has embarked on a number of partnerships. Can you give me some of the the highlights and the reasoning behind that?
Sure. So one announcement is that we're going to be supplying PSD2 software for Fedor Bank. And what's interesting there is that they were a pioneer in open APIs. So for them to say, hey, out of all the things out there that we're going to go with your system, that was a great endorsement. Another announcement is I'm been appointed to the HSBC Technical Advisory Board. So that actually started quite some time ago, but they just announced it. And then the third thing is Virtusa Polaris that we announced a teaming agreement with them. And we have teaming agreements with other SIs, some of which have been announced, some of which haven't been announced. But basically, I'd say the majority of them have come to realize that PSD2 is a great opportunity to go into the bank and take these systems, platforms such as ours, and help the banks to deploy them into the bank and get them up and running before the deadline.
Okay, great. Thank you so much for your time today,
Thank
Steve.
you.